Good morning, Mckenzie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Super good. It's 65 and sunny, which is awesome. It's such a Denver spring. It's great.
That honestly, the sun finally came out this week here, and it's been just a literal game changer. Like everything
Yeah.
about everybody's mood is better. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
All the
Um,
podcasts you watch about or listen to about how getting the sunshine helps us all sleep better.
I
Fingers
know
crossed.
sleep is a touchy subject for me right now, but no, I'm just kidding. The sun helps. So I am so excited to be here with Mckinze Casey from Live Sotheby's International Realty. Her primary market is Denver, and I've been really wanting to have you on here for so many selfish reasons, but I want to highlight before we start that your sales volume is consistently 75 to 100 million. And the big piece of that is that you do about 100 files a year with one assistant.
Okay.
Your goals for me, just in terms of being efficient and your systems. And so I have heard you speak in a couple of places, and I mentioned to you that when I heard you speak at the last, I had a 6 week old when I saw you at the conference here that we had you to,
Yeah.
and I heard you talking about just your systems, and you have twin boys. I don't know how anyone has twins. And I was just like, I need to figure out what she's doing because when I had kids, I was like, wow, you need to get even more serious about your systems and just making sure if you're going to be successful, everything has to be organized. And it seems like you're the epitome of organization, making things scalable, and then just how relevant that is right now in terms of a game plan, just like where the industry is. So I'm really excited to jump into this conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's great. It's I think a lot of people know I haven't been in Denver forever. I have started my career over with Sotheby's 5 different times. And so I definitely knew the recipe. I just you don't anticipate kind of a what do you do once you kind of get the machine rolling and then oh my gosh, how do I manage all these files, by myself at once? I was never the one that wanted a bunch of team members or to manage other people. I can like barely manage myself. So the idea of bringing on other agents was never the goal. So that's really when I had to put kind of a bunch of safety nets in place just to make sure balls didn't get dropped and I could delegate effectively. Someone else could be running the behind the scenes, keeping me out front. So it was definitely a learning curve because Denver's the market I've been in the longest. Any other market that I've been in, I sort of built something and then moved. So this is the one that I've stayed in and managing the growth and really figuring out, what's enough and how to keep it rolling was the goal a few years ago.
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted you to touch on is just kind of like if you could take a little bit of a deeper dive into because you haven't been in that market forever and you've had success in all the markets leading up and remind me how long you've been in Denver.
So I started here in 2016 and
Okay.
so moved here with the twins, were born just before that, took a little bit of time off, closed my Chicago business, and have, some great partners there that are still running that for my clients. But yeah, 2016 was when we hit the ground running here.
That's awesome. And where were you before Chicago?
I was in a brief moment in Cincinnati, Ohio, different market entirely. The infill new construction product was a really difficult one. Well, the market in general was a difficult one to jump into. But so we were really excited to be in Chicago, just tons and tons of opportunity. Love the Jameson, Sotheby's International crew there. And then before that in Arizona, where I'm from originally. So Arizona, Ohio, Wisconsin, Chicago, Colorado.
Wow, that's amazing. And yeah, I mean, that was the most exciting piece for me to have you on here because a lot of people that get on, they've been not that to take away from it, but they've been in the same market for say 25 years and they've been doing, and so
Yeah.
it's hard for someone to listen that's maybe just getting started or just trying to get traction. And they're like, okay, well, it feels like I need that much time. And I feel like what you've done is repeatable. And so it's worth diving into. So that's what we're going to do. So in terms of one thing that we were chatting about before we started, and I was just like I said, selfishly asking, having the little babies and trying to figure out just like how to run a day. I know that you have really clear systems just around the structure of your day. Can you just walk me
Totally.
through what a day looks
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, I mean, nobody likes to wake up early. I totally don't like to wake up early. I feel like in order for me to get in the flow of waking up early, it took me realizing that that was less of a pain point than waking up late, if that makes sense. So waking up late or when the kids wake up just felt like I was already behind the ball, right? Like they needed food and then phone calls start and the rest of the world starts and emails are coming in. And I just instantly felt, like I hadn't had any intention in the day. So, maybe it meant that I went to bed earlier. Maybe it meant that I like didn't have a glass of wine the night before. Maybe it meant that I did everything possible to make the next morning successful rather than just come home from work and then have it all fall apart and then have a glass of wine and then kids stay up too late and everyone's going to sleep too late. Like I'm really, really intentional of the night before to make the next day successful. So I wake up at 4, somewhere in the 4s, and work on the business from 4 to 7. I'm in total mom mode from 7 to 9 every day. Like my phone is on do not disturb. My assistant knows never to book calls or meetings of any kind unless it's an emergency. I say that we like nail it 100%, 80% of the time. So of course there's that time that the client can only speak in that window, but we do whatever is possible to protect that 7 to 9 a.m. And then it's like a light switch. So I have time to wake up, prep for the kids, get them to school, have genuine time with them where I'm not on the phone, multitasking my face off. And then the second it turns 9 o'clock and they're out the door, I'm like a light switch where it's like straight into work mode. And it allows me to be super efficient within those brackets of time. And then same thing, if we try our hardest to not have anything flow over into the end of the day. So if a deadline's not solved by midday, then that becomes like something that my assistant's pinging me every 20 minutes. Like, hey, did this get solved? Did this get solved? Did this get solved? Because she knows that we just don't want that to creep down into kind of that 5 to 8 range. So we put those time blocks in place, and frankly, we communicate really well together. If she needs something from me, I don't anticipate her being up at 4 a.m, right? So anytime that she needs something that day, she'll put it in that time block. So I know exactly what I'm working on.
You do all of your front facing stuff, your showings, all things like that.
Totally.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome.
We have it really hyper organized to the extent that I like am the peacock in front of house and I'm running the business. And then she's in the back end, like keeping the machine going, right? Like, there's situations where I have to be front of house and sometimes I don't even look at my email account, but that email account has to be monitored. And some things are urgent. Other things she just needs to respond with saying, Mckinze's in a meeting right now. Can we get a call scheduled for 2 p.m? Something just so that I don't go a whole day without responding, because we've all had that where we don't even have a chance to like look at our email address. And unfortunately, sometimes, clients, care about the response rate and they just want to know that I heard you, I'm going to get back to it in the meeting at the minute. That's part of the behind the scenes stuff that just has to happen.
We talked about differentiating yourself and kind of spinning the positive as to like where the industry is right now. There's a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty. You seem super honed in on differentiating yourself. A lot of what you're saying right now is how you differentiate yourself. But what is your point of differentiation when you're meeting with a client, especially a buyer right now?
I mean, I think that part of when people ask like how have you started over so many times in different markets, I had always found myself so lucky to be under Sotheby's because it was an instant door opener for me. And it was a brand that everybody knew. And they didn't really ask me like, how long have you been in Denver? Or how long have you been in Chicago? Like I literally in my 20 years of doing this have never received that question. I mean, I like to tell people now because I've been doing it for 21 years. But, nobody asks ever when you're with Sotheby's in my experience. And so I was so lucky to be able to leverage that brand to get doors opened. And then I was just the type that had to be insanely over prepared. So, when I moved to the Denver market, I paid a lot of attention on trying to figure out a micro market that I could be better at than anybody else, right? I think the famous Jim Miller always talks about like, don't be okay at everything, be better or best at one thing better than any other agent. And so that's just how I took it. Right. And if I was, gonna, look at a high-rise condo building downtown, I needed to know that building better than anybody else, like any agent, no matter who is living in the building, who has sold a bunch in the building. There's always going to be, a buyer pool or a seller pool that is attracted to someone who knows it better than anybody. And so that's how I launched it. I just tried to differentiate myself by being better.
I love that. And earlier you said creating referable experiences, which I wrote down.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have like somewhat of a chip on my shoulder, which maybe it'll go away now, but because I mean, my mom owned a real estate company, my dad owned a architecture firm, and so I grew up in this industry, and I've been doing it all through college, and I've been doing it for over 2 decades, and so I always had this like little bit of friction with the people that are like, do it part-time or also taught yoga and did a part-time Starbucks barista. And then, they think it's just like reality TV, which it's the opposite of that. And so I always overcompensated with trying to make sure that I had marketing materials, like brand product, everything was really in line to make sure that the consumer realized that there is a difference between a career broker and somebody who just does it as a hobby. And
Mhm.
so a lot of our processes are education based of like, hey, do you know what I do, how I get paid, what my responsibility is, and what I'm here for? And so we have a really, really formal buyer process that we've had since the beginning. It involves kind of a puppy dog and sunshine phone call when we have the initial call with the client. We always have an in-person meeting. We call it our buyer orientations, where we literally go through everything. The purchase contract, the buyer engagement agreement, everything is clear at that point. And then we have a very formal engagement process before we start working with them. And I think that that is what's exciting about this current phase, is because we've already had that in place. We instantly differentiate ourselves because we don't just go to a house and unlock a door, right? We try to give the the consumer the perception and the understanding that it's a totally different experience. And now that we're entering a world where buyers are going to have to sign engagement agreements that say that they pay for the representation, I think they're going to think twice about who they, sign with. And I think they're going to filter through buy-side agents just like the same amount of work they do when they're looking at listing agents.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. There's so much service that you are delivering, and some people just aren't used to having that initial walk through what it is. And the fact that we talked about that before, your buyer process, it's just, that's where I think a lot of this, it's not just trying to spin a positive, it is a positive, that's going to be something that, to your point, we're going to be differentiating even more from those people that are part-time. Yesterday I was in Cape Cod going through a bunch of our offices, and I was like dying by the end of the day, I needed a coffee, and I jumped into a coffee shop, and there was this like really put together wedding planner, because that's a popular, industry down there. And you could tell it was an initial meeting, and she was having people sign paperwork, and I was standing in line and listening to her, and I'm like, this is kind of what, not to compare the two industries, but that's what the first meeting really needs to be. It doesn't need to be at a house. You can't be the first meeting at a showing. It needs to really be sitting down and walking through like what you can expect, what I'm going to do for you, and like get the person excited about the service that you're going to provide.
Totally. Like I can't even hire a landscape architect without signing an engagement agreement in advance. Like no one's doing a minute of work for
Right.
even like planning a kid's birthday party. No one's doing a minute of work for me unless they know how they're getting paid. And we manage assets that are significantly more than a birthday party, right?
Right.
And so I think that the sooner you can kind of get that understood on that side and really say like, I'm not, you're not just getting my advice on how, if this house is a great deal or not, like you're leveraging 2 decades of experience. And so that's what, it's not just a like surface level conversation, right? I'm not going to ask my attorney to tell me to like, can you just review this lease for me, like for free? Like,
Right. Right.
I think that it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. And I think we're all super fortunate to be at this brand, um,
Mhm.
where we're, automatically seen as a higher echelon. And I think it's all our responsibility to make sure that, people just are informed a bit more on how the sausage is made. And although people may have like skimmed over it in the past, I think that it's kind of required now.
Agreed. I love that. I wanted to jump in a little bit to I know you touched on it, but your consistent marketing efforts. And I love that you said the word consistent, because I feel like sometimes people think they need to hit, and I don't actually know a ton about what you're doing, but what I gathered from just the high level response before we started was, I think consistency is just such a key word, because people want to do so much. And you keep saying micro markets and focus in on like, if you could walk us through some sort of example of just like
Yeah.
putting in, being consistent in one simple way without trying to do too much.
Yeah, I mean, I referenced Jim Miller a lot because I was fortunate to be working at his office in Chicago before I was in Denver. And so a lot of what we did there, I replicated here. And so a lot of it was like value add pieces to a very specific targeted market. So for example, like in a condo building, I would figure out who owned their condo as a second or third home rather than an owner occupied. And I became their only source for information for the value of their asset. And let's say they lived in Boston, but they owned a condo in Denver. That was a consistent marketing piece that they received from me that talked about what's going on in the building, the values, which units are selling for better on the north side versus the south side. So it was very, very data driven. It was very value add to them. People said that like they waited to receive them, and the look was always consistent, so they knew what to expect every time. And it was a situation where I was managing basically their knowledge on the asset that they own in a different state, and it worked really well because it was Sotheby's. They, knew Sotheby's. It was something that they expected consistently. And in one case, and I know that that's not a quick, like send one postcard out and get a phone call. I also never wanted it to be about like, look at me, look at all my sales, look at like, that's just not my style. And so I wanted to be the one that was providing value and having them call me and say like, oh, it seems like you really know this building. I've got this 2-bedroom on the north side. Like, can you talk to me? We're thinking about exiting next year. And that conversation is so natural for me. So I think that was a piece, those are the types of pieces that I sent out consistently. I never worried if it took quite a long time. I remember when I was in Chicago and I started that, I think it was 11 months of no phone calls and constantly, sending out really well thought out pieces to a really targeted audience, right? It was not a wide net. It was a very like deep ditch. And I think on month 11, I had some attorney call me who represented a lot of people that owned in the building, and his entire clientele wanted to liquidate everything in the building. So it was, it literally springboarded my career there, because of just this consistent outreach and value add pieces to people. So whenever I have a idea, which is often, I always put it on this brainstorm list first, because I know for a fact that something that we're implementing has to be done consistently. And I can't just like buy an ad here, spend money over here, do something here. Like we have to think about it. We have to totally make sure that we're willing to consistently do it for a year before we assess its effectiveness. We have to run it by leadership to make sure that everyone is like giving the thumbs up on this thing. But my, massive brainstorm list is massive. And we do that so we don't just sort of like throw things on the wall and see what sticks, but everything is really, really intentional and executed consistently.
I love that. The value add thing, I just want to underscore it, like consistency and value added without so much of real estate is people saying just sold. And like, I don't mean to, it's okay. Like, I don't like to disparage anything that people are doing and making an effort, but it's like, what value is that adding? It's if you send a just sold postcard or with some information to the neighborhood, right? Like just think about what is this person getting out of that? Because I think that I have seen your social media and I love that you put out like buyer searches and just like some different things that I've noticed. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting because it adds this value. It might not be me, but I'm noticing it brings something to the table that isn't just information that you're sort of yelling out that doesn't require any like action. Where I have to ask, where do you keep your brainstorming list?
So we actually made our own task management CRM platform that is the coolest thing on the planet. And we've been trying to help a few other agents, within the brand to try to get them hyper organized. I mean, I think that I was like destined to have twins because I swear my middle name is like efficiency. My degree is in supply chain management. And so the only way I can think about it is like, hey, is this a great idea? We should implement it efficiently every single time and someone else should do it.
Yeah.
So we built the whole business on like, making sure that there's, the second a buyer calls, there's 30 things that happen. And then the second we have an in-person onboarding meeting, 30 more things happen. And all of it is in how we run the brand, how we run the company, how we leverage the Sotheby's brand, how we leverage the Live brand. Everything is dialed in there. So the brainstorming list lives in there. And then, if we have the moment, we do audits every quarter of our processes, and then we can pull out like, okay, we need, there's an opportunity in this market, like in the Denver market in Q4, we had only 40% of listings that went on the market actually sell. So for every like 10 homes that were on the market, 4 sold and 6 were pulled off the market entirely because they like their agents didn't prep them right. They weren't realistic on pricing because, it was a tricky quarter. So, that's a huge opportunity, right? Like for the people who tried to sell for the last 2 years and didn't sell, like how do we create a campaign around that? So that's the type of stuff that then we kind of put our heads together and try to figure out something that, is as effective as possible, and not just a, hey, look at me and what I've sold lately, but more like, hey, what are the top 10 mistakes that sellers did in Q4 that made them not sell, right? Like we had a specific campaign just for that.
I love that. That's so cool. What do your evenings look like? Do you do a lot of, or anything really much in the evenings?
I'm very boring. You and I were talking about this before. Like, it's not my moment to be cool. It's not my moment to go to happy hours. It's not my moment to like go out. It's my moment to make sure the day is wrapped from a work perspective, be super present with the family. It's really important to me that I'm like making dinners. It's important to me that the kids are involved with that. It's important to me that we're eating at a dinner table. That is important to me. I mean, they're 9, they're soon gonna like not even like me. So this is my moment to do that. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm nuts when it comes to food and sleep. And so I just try whatever's possible to make sure that the kids are on a great routine. And the structure is wild, but it makes it so that the free time truly is free time, and I'm not multitasking, because that's what the business is. It's, whoever sacrifices the most typically wins. And I just try to make sure that that doesn't overlap into the family piece. But the Sunday planning is a huge part of it. We take a 2-hour chunk. We look at like, what's everyone eating for the week? Do we have like everything's dialed? So there's, no like, oh my gosh, we forgot about soccer practice. Like we can't have that happen.
Is there anything that you want to leave us with? Any tips for someone who might just be getting started in a new market?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I did is I tried to find something that I could be better at than anybody. So it takes a lot of like looking at the full market and seeing what the pace is, what the pricing is, who are the agents involved. I think that one thing that I did in the Chicago market when I started there is I went to the top agents and said, like, I'll do anything for you for free. You need me to put lock boxes on, brochures on, whatever you need. Like, I will be the yes person for you. And so it gave me a lot of opportunities by doing that. Just to see how someone else was running their business. But then picking one thing that you're going to be better at than anybody. If you think about it, like I know the agents in my office who are experts on the investment and the multi-unit side. I know the agents that are experts on the land deals. I know the agents that have just really made a name for themselves in a specific product type or area. And that's how you can sort of become known for something. And you're not just a realtor or an agent or a broker. You are the person who's an expert in X. And so you just get a lot more at-bats that way. You have something to actually say, right? Like I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, like I had represented more buyers than any other agent in the Denver market between 1.5 and 2.5. Like that says a lot, right? That means that I got a ton of first looks at new listings before they went on the market because I had created this insane buyer pool where I was managing people coming in from all over the country. And so to be able to say something and not just say I am an agent, but to have a specialty is really how I was able to kind of springboard.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Clearly,
you're welcome.
You manage it so tightly, and I'm so glad that you were able to do this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Have a good day.
You got it. Thank you. Bye, guys.